Okay, Joe. This is an episode that I think that we have been both looking forward to for some time now.
Yeah.
So let's start off by you sharing a little bit with the ladies listening about how you found yourself on this journey and how we met.
I think when I was younger, I think I was definitely that person that was just like, oh, well, if I have kids, I have kids. It doesn't matter. Like, we'll be fine. We'll have a good life either way. And then, so my husband and I traveled. We did have a really good life. But then as I got a little bit older, the sort of desire started creeping in a little bit more. And so we started trying for a baby. Didn't work as quickly as we would have hoped. So we ended up seeking a little bit of fertility assistance fairly sort of quickly. And then, of course, we had that miracle while we were waiting to do a treatment. We fell pregnant. But then, unfortunately, we lost that baby sort of just towards the end of the first trimester. And I think from then, my like mama bear instincts just kicked in. I was like, oh my God, okay, I want a baby. I'll do anything to have a baby now. It totally just changed me. And I knew from that moment that being a mum and having a family was important to me more than it probably had been in the past. And so that sort of, once we got over the loss, we started again looking back at fertility treatments. And then I was obviously searching around, looking at different things. I'd always had a fairly holistic approach to health and lifestyle. So I was looking for that, something else about mindset or what I could be missing outside of just, trying to make a baby. And then, I came across your book, I think originally. So I read your book. I remember reading it like I was in Bali on a holiday and just like going through it, I think in like 48 hours, just like knowing that this was something that would help me. Obviously didn't always know exactly how, but I knew there was gold in there for me. And then I think probably like a lot of people's stories at the moment, the world closed down, COVID happened. I think it was literally like we flew back from Bali. Yeah, it was all starting to go haywire. And so we were sort of stuck, our clinic closed down. And then we were looking for other clinics, and there were some really, clinics that were advocating to keep treatments happening at that time. And then, so we sort of got into the rat race, I guess, that was IVF. Back then, we were naive and excited. And I think in May 2020, we did an IVF cycle, and it all looked pretty good. We fell pregnant the first time. Again, we're like, oh, we're heroes. We only have to do this once. Like, this is going to be great. But then, we ended up losing that baby as well. And I think from there, things just, the sort of glow of everything just washed away pretty quickly. I was like, okay, this isn't going to be as easy as I'd hoped it would be. And I just felt like I needed more support. So I think it was, not long after that cycle, I think around sort of September 2020 probably, that I reached out to you a bit more and we chatted, and then I joined your 8-week coaching program. And I think for me, I think other calls were at like 3:00 in the morning or something. So I guess.
But you were gangster enough to do it, Joe. You were
exactly.
gangster and so committed. I think this is an interesting point. It may sound silly to other people, but the fact that you were willing to get up at dark o'clock at 3 a.m. without any excuses and loving yourself and loving your vision for this family enough to get your ass out of bed, like that's what you were willing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it definitely showed me then and there. I was like, okay, you're actually like, you're in this. You're not just, it's not just something to do. Like it's a big commitment. And I knew that I needed that extra push and support, and, started to meet other women in the group. I still talk to Robin almost every day that I met her through your program. And and it was, I think you were so gracious. You'd let all of us go first so we could ask our questions, and then if we couldn't stay up, we could listen to the recording a bit like later on of everyone else's stories. And so that was September, and I think that sort of took me through to the end of that year. And then I started then continuing working with you through coaching more directly. Again, I think like most women doing this, like I had that, I was like, it's going to happen within a year. Like I'm doing this, like doesn't matter. And, you know, that doesn't always work out that way. But I think I was just that person that was willing to just do whatever I needed and, yeah, look at different ways of doing this because it's not easy. Like it's something I never thought I'd experience, and I didn't understand the magnitude of it when I walked into it. But yeah, I'm
And you're
glad
here
that
now, Jo.
yeah, exactly. Like I'm glad I did it and would do
Well,
it over
think
again.
about this. Like, this is so important. This, like, you're just dropping bombs, whether you realize it or not. Like, but this is such the Jo way anyway, you know, kind of like fly under the radar, but like brilliance everywhere. Is that you made a decision. Because at that point, you know, like think about it, like we were talking about before we started recording. I mean, here you were once a listener and now you're a guest. That doesn't happen because you have a short attention span.
Yeah.
So that happens because you've made a decision. And it's less about like how fast it happens. What matters is that it does. And you had the kind of resilience to keep going. You found another gear within you to keep going. So let's talk about that. Okay. So by this point, you had tried IVF, you got pregnant, you had a natural pregnancy before that. So share a little bit about, you know, what were the next steps for you and how did you start applying this mindset stuff to take you to where you are today?
Yeah. So I think we then, you know, we'd had a good sort of first cycle. We did more transfers. Unfortunately, we sort of we started a trend, I guess, started appearing, and we would fall pregnant, we'd get the positive test, but then, you know, a few weeks later, usually before we'd even get to a scan stage, the numbers would start dropping and the lines would start fading. And so we, you know, we just kept losing these babies that we worked so hard for, but no one could give us a reason. Like everyone was just like, oh, you know, you're getting older, it just happens. Like, and these are the professionals, like these are the ones that we look to for the answers, and they just didn't have any. And I think I was reflecting on this, and I think the biggest thing that I got initially out of this program was the advocating. The like, it's okay to not think that doctors know everything. It's okay to question them. It's okay to get a second, third, 12th opinion. Like it's your journey and no one wants it more than you do. And these doctors, like they're, you know, gosh, they're all so busy and they're not, you know, I think they're trying to do the best, but they don't know everything. And so, yeah, I think with that first clinic, we did a number of cycles because I think we were just, you know, we thought it'll happen eventually. We're getting so close, like it's, you know, it's there for us, but it was just always that little bit out of reach. And then we made a decision. I think even by then I was starting to, you know, I'd joined some Instagram, like the Instagram IVF community, and we're looking for everyone else's experiences and what doctors they saw and what advice they were getting, and just really became a bit of an expert in all things, I suppose, in that unexplained category, or unexplored, I think is a better explanation, because
I
there's always
love
a
that.
reason. There's always a reason. We just haven't found it yet. And yeah, so started really just becoming that person that was advocating, researching, asking questions. I started seeing different doctors. I started demanding certain tests. And so we sort of got a little bit of a glimmer. There was like this sort of random gene incompatibility that my husband and I share. And there was a doctor in Australia. I think there's 2 doctors in Australia that treat us for it. So we moved across to him. So that was doing, you know, crazy treatments like, was it doing LMIT or LIT treatments? So injecting my husband's white blood cells into my skin, and which I think it always made me laugh because it's legal. Well, it's allowed in Australia, but it's actually not allowed in America. So I always thought that was interesting. I'm like, it's not like us to be doing something that you're not. So yeah, so we started going down this really heavy, I guess, immune protocol, trying to stop my body from rejecting the embryos because of sort of that incompatibility between my husband and I. And they were no joke, these protocols. Like, you're on high dose steroids, you're on all these drugs that they, treat for cancer patients. And it was all very like overwhelming, I guess. But you're like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm doing all the things, like whatever it takes, sort of thing. And yeah, so we moved across to this other doctor and we thought, yep, this is it. This will be what we need. And then again, did a couple of cycles with transfer, with him, but same result. We kept getting pregnant and then having early losses. And so we were sort of like, okay, what is this? Like, what do we actually need? And then there was a girl that I followed in America, and she had a really similar story to me. And she ended up I kept just seeing this doctor's name everywhere. And she went to a doctor in New York, and he did surgery and found something actually physically in her uterus that was causing these losses. And then again, he popped up. You interviewed him on one of your podcasts, and I was like, okay, this guy's everywhere. Like, I have to talk to him. Yeah, and so I now listened, and he was doing some more like interesting things. He was doing like the ovarian PRP. I was like, okay, I want to know more about this. And yeah, and it was just like the universe just kept telling me, I'm like, you have to talk to this guy. Like, he's got something to tell you. And so I booked in. So Dr. Murphy in New York, booked in with him. And I think when you've seen so many fertility doctors and, other doctors and things, like, they all have a certain way about them. But Dr. Murphy, it was like he was sitting next to you, hugging you through the whole consult. Like, we're on the other side of the world, and he was just lovely. Like, and I think finding doctors like that are very rare, but also just so special because, like, you're being listened to. He's not making any assumptions based on anything. He's just there and wants to help you, like genuinely wants to help you. So yeah, we talked to him and we told him our history, and he was just like, nah, I don't buy it. I don't think it's your embryos. I think, you wouldn't be falling pregnant so many times if there was something that, really wrong. And yeah, he said, I think there's something, structurally wrong inside your uterus. And I was like, okay, like, I've had laparoscopies, I've had hysteroscopies, like, how could there be something that these doctors haven't found? And he was very confident, and he even to the point that he said, come over, I'll do a surgery. We can do the ovarian PRP as well. And if you don't have, he thought I had a septum that I would have had from birth. He said, if you don't have it, I'll pay for your flights. I was like, okay, this guy's confident. So I was like, how do you pass that up? And we sat on it for a little while. We thought, it's a big deal, like, to fly across to the other side of the world and have surgery. And again, we live in Australia where our medical treatments are paid for, and to go over and, go to a different country and pay for it yourself, it's, all these things that were coming up. But the biggest thing for me was like, I could go and get it done here in Australia, but I'll never trust the outcome unless Dr. Murphy does it, because he was so convinced and so sure. And, I knew that even if I didn't have what he thought I had, that he would have done his best to find it. So that just sort of sat with me, and I was like, okay, we've just got to do this. So yeah, it was in April this last year, 2023. We jumped on a plane and flew to New York, and yeah, we made the most of it. We planned to have a holiday while we were there, and we went out to LA and spent time with some friends afterwards. But yeah, I went in for this surgery, and it was relatively quick, painless procedure. And then I came out, and he showed me a video of this septum that he'd found, and I was just like, no, I can't believe it. Like, how could you know this from the other side of the country without physically examining me? And it was just wild. Like, he videoed it and he showed, how he could see where it was. And then as he removed it, there was just this like massive blood flow that just came into that certain part of my uterus. And I was just like, of course, like, no wonder these babies weren't surviving, because it was basically the top half of my uterus that just had no blood flow. So yeah, and I think seeing that visualization of what he did then just stuck with me. I was like, okay, everything's fine now. It's everything, we have everything we need now. And, even visualizing around embryo transfers, like, you could physically just see this beautiful, uterus that was working properly. So yeah, I just remember bursting into tears when he showed me the video. I was just like, how did you know this? I'm so grateful that we made the leap and the decision to, fly across the country, or not across the country, across the world, to see this, confident doctor that had answers for us.
Well, look at that, Jo. I mean, like, that is beautiful. And we love Dr. Murray. He's such a compassionate human being, such a gifted physician. And you had to be willing to take that leap. I mean, can you imagine, like, because think about what you had said earlier. Like, I mean, I've had laparoscopies and endoscopies. I've done all this. Like, there had to have been something within you, a level of resilience that you had to cultivate in order to be willing to get this new piece of information, to take that risk. Like, dude, because that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I mean, I had my own thoughts, and everyone else was like, oh, surely doctors in Australia know what they're doing. And maybe they did, but they'd let me down so many times. I was like, no, I'm getting the best. I'm going to go further to get that reassurance that I need, because what else are we doing here otherwise? Like, yeah.
Well, it's not even like it's just, am I willing to have some other opinion? Am I willing to open up to the possibility? Because nobody, I mean, like, when I think of everything that you went through, Jo, your love for these babies and your love for your vision for your family was so strong. And you didn't let that get in the way. I mean, all the heartbreak that you had, it really seemed to me as an observer, because I've had the good fortune of getting to know you over this time, is your belief, even in the dark times. Like, there was a part of you that held on to this dream and was willing to stick it out. I mean, what do you think that is in you? Because, like, the women listening are going to be like, how did she go through all of those things that she went through? Like, how did she keep going? What do you think that was?
Yeah, and I've been asked that a lot too, and I think about it, because I don't know that we always 100% know, like, what it is, but I always just, it's like this knowing in my heart that there was our baby was out there. And I mean, they were showing us so much, how much they were trying to get to us. And I never once doubted that. Like, I had, there were moments of doubt, but I think deep down, I always knew our baby was out there. And I believed that, we would find a way to get to them. But yeah, just that knowing. And I think as well, like, apart from that sort of spiritual, emotional side, probably just a downright stubbornness too, if I'm completely honest, that, like, I don't like to lose. And it's not a competition. It's not about that. It's more that this is something I wanted in our life. I pictured our life with this baby, and I wasn't stopping until I got there. Like, obviously there would be an end point at some point, but that wasn't where I was at along the way. Like, there was always a part of me that's like, no, we've still got it in us. We're still doing this, because that baby was, we were connected to them. We were talking to them. Like, they felt like they were already here with us, even though we were still, looking for them physically. We had that really strong emotional and spiritual connection with them. And that, that came from work too, that, did some work with hypnotherapists and spirit baby healers, and just again looking for ways to help navigate through the dark times. I'd say a belief, and then definitely stubbornness.
Wow. I love that. So you had the surgery with Dr. Murphy, and that was in April.
Yeah.
So then tell us what happened next.
Yeah. So we come to the end, sort of. I think we didn't have any embryos left at that point, so we knew we had, and obviously doing that ovarian PRP was to hope that we could then go back, get some good quality embryos. So we came back to Australia and did another IVF sim cycle, and I think we ended up with 2 embryos, and we did another transfer. And again, unfortunately, we had the same outcome. We had another early loss, and I was like, oh, okay, this is not what it was. I was like, I thought we had the miracle answer, but I guess it didn't work that time. But we still were like, okay, we're there, we're still here, we're getting closer. And then I think almost immediately after that, we fell pregnant naturally, and we're like, okay, wow, this is like, it was, heartbreaking, but also very reassuring. We're like, okay, so something's happening, like everything, it keeps trying to happen for us. And so, I think, but, as positive as that felt, it was also probably, I feel like, one of the darkest times that I had in this journey. I was just miserable. I was like, no, like, we went to America. This was supposed to be our magic pill. It was going to work. And then, back-to-back losses was just devastating. And I think it was June by then, and the middle of a very cold and miserable winter where we were living. And I was at that point, I'm like, okay, something has to change for us. Like, I can't keep living this way. Like, everything was focused on treatments and what we were going to do next. And so my husband and I made a decision that we were going to move. And we'd had this on our minds and hearts for a number of years. We'd bought a property up in Queensland, so in the northern part of Australia. And so going from like a cold climate to it had always been this sort of this thing that we had, that we're like, oh, once we get pregnant, we'll move. Once we have our babies, we'll move. And so it was like, we'll go next year. And then we still weren't pregnant, so we wouldn't go. And it was just this thing that we kept delaying. And I got to the point, I was like, we can't keep putting all of our life on hold for our baby, because I felt that it was just sending the wrong message as well, that, we were just stuck and miserable and we weren't willing to like take those steps. We were flying across the world to do things for this baby, but we weren't willing to pack up and move our life for something that we wanted to do. And so I was like, nah, that's it. We're doing it. I don't care what happens next. We're moving. So we made that decision in June, and then, we ended up moving early sort of November. So it all happened quite quickly, but we were like, what have we got to lose? Where, I'm lucky enough that I have a business that I can work from anywhere, so that wasn't going to matter. I felt like Adi was definitely at a point where he needed a change with his job. He'd been there for like 20 years. So I think we made that decision, and then it was like, because I'd said we'd always had that, I'll have my babies in Queensland, but I'll wait until I'm pregnant. And so it was sort of which one was going to come first. And then I was thinking about it last night, that ended up happening, but we didn't have to wait as such, because we still moved to Queensland with our baby in my belly, but I had surrendered that control, and it still happened for us. Like, it was, sort of surreal that dream that we had still came true, even though we let go of how that dream was going to happen.
Jo, okay, so like the bus a little bit. All right, so you make the decision that you're going to move to Queensland in June. You actually do it in November, But you got pregnant somewhere along the way.
Yeah. So we were sort of at that point, we we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to just keep trying naturally, or will we go back and do IVF again? And so we decided to change doctors again because that was that gold that I got from the program. And it's the one thing that I always use for my decisions was if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I'd been highly recommended this doctor that we went to, and it just wasn't what I expected it to be. So I was like, no, okay, I don't care. I know I've changed doctors so many times at this point, but we're doing it again. And thankfully this time it was within the same clinic, so it was quite simple. We didn't have to move embryos and things like that. Yeah, so we moved across to this other doctor, and he was a doctor that I'd followed for a long time. Lots of people loved him and had great successes with him. And we ended up deciding to do another IVF sim cycle. So that ended up being like my 8th sim cycle. Again, I never thought I'd do that many, and by that point we'd had, I think, 7 transfers and then those two natural pregnancies. And yeah, so we did another sim cycle. He did a few other different little treatments for us. And then we got, I guess, that the golden embryo. We got a genetically normal, really high quality embryo out of that cycle, which was really exciting. And then we prepped and did everything for this. We were still doing these heavy immune protocols while alongside doing a transfer. And so towards the end of October, we did our 8th transfer. And literally, like, I was packing boxes in my 2-week wait. Like, it was a busy time. We even had, my mum had moved in at this point, because once we told her we were moving, she said, okay, well, you're not going without me. So they sold their house and moved. They're like 5 minutes down the road from us now. So that's going to be great in a few months. It's great now, but it's going to be extra great. And yeah, so we had my mum and my stepdad living with me, and it was a very different 2-week wait than a lot of the other ones I'd had. And yeah, and it worked. Like, this baby stuck around, and we had really, really good outcomes from the get-go. Like, we had strong beta numbers, good scan. Yeah, and I think, well, it was actually so we found out we were pregnant. We did all the bloods. But then, yeah, we literally got into the car and drove, like, I think it's 18 hours. We drove to Queensland. And then, yeah, it wasn't until we actually got up here that we had our very first scan at the sort of 6-week mark. So it was just, yeah, it was insane just leaving, a town that we'd lived in and gone through all of everything through IVF and pregnancy loss in Bendigo. And then, yeah, we're leaving this town with this little baby inside of us. That, yeah, it just felt so surreal, because it was what I imagined doing, but it sort of just happened in a different way. It was like I had to surrender and just get back to living and doing what we needed in a bigger sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Jo, I would love it if you would tell us what it was like, because at this point, based on what you've shared thus far, you took some chances, just totally went about this by heart, running all over the world, made a decision to move to a place that you actually wanted to be, leaving Bendigo, and then finding out you're pregnant and doing this drive. What was it like for you to really take a step back and look at the fact that you had basically created the life that you actually wanted to live?
Yeah, I was reflecting on this the other day. It was the whole time, like, we bought this property up here 4 years ago. And it was like, one day we'll move up here, we'll have our little babies, and, we'll just have this beautiful, peaceful beachside life. And so that was always the goal. And then, everything took a bit longer than we wanted. And we just kept saying, oh, next year we'll go, next year we'll either be pregnant or we'll have a little baby and we'll move up then. And so we kept sort of kind of putting it off because we were, just living that IVF rat race. And then I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, holy shit, that actually happened. And it was the moment, and we didn't necessarily plan it that way. Of course, we were still doing treatments and things, but we didn't wait for the positive pregnancy test to move. We didn't wait for the ultrasound or the baby to be born. We just decided, enough is enough. We can't keep living this way. I think it was the middle of winter when we decided, and it was freezing cold. I'd literally just had back-to-back losses and I was just miserable. And I was like, nah, I can't do it. I just can't keep waking up every day in the same house, thinking about all the same things. And yeah, so we just went, stuff it, we're going, made it happen. I think we moved within about 4.5 months of that decision. And even in that gap, we still did another cycle. And then we, transferred this embryo. And yeah, to just sort of wake up here one day and go, oh my God, our dreams actually came true. But it was when we let go that it came true. Yeah, it baffles me still because I am such a planning and, control freak, for want of a better word. And yeah, just having to sort of take your hands off the wheel a little bit and let it happen. It did. And yeah, that's not to say that that's the reason it happened, but it definitely just felt more natural and yeah, special the way it actually turned out.
Yeah, and when you think about that, I mean, because there's a constellation of things, right? You had to, and I think the thing that unites all of this is you. And ultimately who you were being, because you had to be willing to go to New York, have that surgery, continue to do transfers, continue to do cycles. It's surrender, but surrender does not mean giving up. It's not like you just threw your hands up and said, well, I don't care about this. Of course you care about this.
Yeah.
This means everything to you, but you are the common denominator because you had to keep going. What do you think that was in you?
Yeah, I think all along, if I stopped and listened, I just always knew we were having a baby. I could feel our babies out there. I was talking to them, there was just that thing in my heart. I was like, no, even doctors, of course, they suggest different things, donor egg, surrogacy. And I just was like, I think I even said to you one day, I was like, I could go to Greece and get pregnant with a donor egg and have an amazing holiday. And I love traveling, but it wasn't what I wanted. And, you'd sort of go back and forth about, how long could we keep doing this? Is this the right path? All of those doubts that would creep in. But every time I stopped, it was just like, no, these babies, they keep telling us to keep going, as heartbreaking as it is to keep, losing them. But in my heart, I just always knew there was our baby out there for us. A big, I think, we've talked about it, but that big hell yes or big hell no, if that wasn't how I felt, I just was like, okay, well, not now. And there was no judgment on if it meant later that it would be a hell yes. But yeah, my heart just kept saying, you've got, it's coming, it'll happen. And yeah, I just had to trust that because I don't know what else could we do because I wasn't ready to walk away.
Well, and you're raising such an excellent point because so many people get stuck on the idea of how much longer can I do this? Well, it's like, we're talking about your baby. What the fuck? What are you going to do? Just give up on that? Do you think you could actually live with yourself if you did that?
Yeah, no. No.
And most of the time, Jo, I mean, I'm curious to see what you think about this because anyone who's seriously entertaining how much longer can we do this is not thinking from their heart. They're thinking based on somebody else's judgment about what it means to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's all, there's comparisons, there's doctors telling you one thing, there's, even there's always different things. There's your bank account balance telling you one thing, there's the physical side of it. There's there's all those factors coming in. But yeah, I think that was one of the things I learned along the way, was just to stop and listen to what I really wanted, because it did get noisy and it did get, heartbreaking and sad and all of those things. But yeah, there was always that little voice inside of me that was just saying, no, like, don't give up. Like, we can do this. And, I could say that to myself. I think, if a lot of people were telling me, keep going, you can do it, that would be different. But if I could sit there and still know in my heart, and AD was the same, that he knew, he's like, no, like, there's more for our story than this. But yeah, and he had that knowing, but he also had the feeling that something had to change, that we couldn't just keep doing what we were doing, because we were just miserable, like, and understandably so, with what we'd been through.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it's just really fascinating. Obviously everyone's story is different. That in some ways almost goes without saying, but it's a powerful reminder. But when you made that decision to move, that was this sort of closing this heaviness chapter. Like, I'm going to go live the way that I want to live. And that necessarily changes your energy and the energy that you bring to all that you do. And like 4 months later, boom. And now you're 20 weeks pregnant.
Yeah. Crazy.
Wow. I think it's fascinating because, as we were discussing earlier, I mean, the woman that you had to become in order to get from all of the losses, the failed cycles, traveling and doing all these things, and then taking a stand for the way that you want to live, you changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a relatively reasonably short amount of time. I mean, those were such incredibly demanding scenarios that were going on for you. Wow. And it's such a joy, Jo, to see you this way now. I mean, so what would you want? Like, if you were going to toss the ladies listening a nugget of wisdom, is what we'll call it, what would you want them to take away from your story?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I reflect back on, and I think I even counted up how many doctors I saw along the way, but was, don't feel bad for looking for a second opinion or feeling like, you have to question what the doctor's telling you, because no one knows you better than you, and no one wants it more than you. And so, I think I racked up like 11 specialists along the way. And that's just what we had to do, because they weren't doing what we needed. And in the end, gosh, we had to go to New York City to find someone that would look differently at our case and not just write us off for age and bad eggs, because we can't prove that anyway. So we'll just say that's what it is. And so just trusting that, if you don't feel right with a doctor, even if your best friend loved them and they got your best friend pregnant, or everyone got pregnant with this doctor, if they don't feel right for you, don't feel bad about getting a second opinion, or a third or an 11th. It's really, because it's precious. What you're doing is precious. Everything about it is sacred and special. And if your doctor's not there for you and actually committed to look at you as a patient and as a person, as a mother, then they're not the right person for you. And I think I stayed with probably our first one for way too long, because, it was just, she was the go-to, and, but she was just doing the same thing over and over, and nothing was changing, of course. And so, just wish, and I was probably not brave enough then to look for something different. But then once I did, it was kind of a cascade, and I was like, nope, you're no good either. No, you're not it. And it's, it's all just part of our story to get where we got. And each doctor obviously added different parts. But yeah, until we found, the perfect combination, I just had to keep changing. And, I'd often ask AD, I'm like, is it okay? Can we change again? He's like, yeah, of course. If it's not right, it's not right, because, you wouldn't stay with anyone else, I think. But yeah, there's just that fear that if we change something, maybe if we had stayed, that was our baby the next cycle. And it's like, no, if you're not trusting them enough, it's not going to happen. So I think, yeah, I wish I'd learnt that a bit earlier. But yeah, and there's so much information out there for other people like that'll share their experiences with doctors. And I think, as I said, like that's how I found Dr. Murphy in New York, was someone else went to him and I was like, oh, maybe that's what we need. And yeah, just sharing with, friends or family or whoever it is, that to figure out what it might be that's missing and who it might be that will get you your baby.
Yeah. Well, in the end, Jo, it was you.
Yes.
You got your baby. You were the woman that was willing to think differently, to believe bigger than anyone else. I mean, that was one of the biggest bombs that you dropped in this interview, was nobody wants this more than you. And if you don't know how to think, and if you don't know how to move past all the negativity and can think critically beyond statistics and having the guts to go, to 11 specialists and say, hey, I'm not stopping. I mean, most people would have tapped out at 2. But you were so committed, and Adi was so committed to getting to the place where you guys are finally going to meet this baby, that, you were able to overcome so many different things. So, I mean, thank you so much for sharing this with us, because there's so much of what you said that women just need to hear and to see from another living human being, that you can live this journey, you can live it on your terms, you can take leaps, and you can still get to where you want to go. But sometimes it isn't exactly predictable, but it's always 10,000 times better than we think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's one of those things it'll always be a part of us and our story. But I think, we took the good out of it where we could. Like, we learned so much. I'm such a more empathetic person than I was 5 years ago. There's so many different parts that it does bring. Obviously, a lot of it isn't what you would wish on anyone, but we just had to find the good in it. And, now we're halfway to meeting our little baby. So
I'm so excited. You're going to have a beach baby, girl. You're going to have a beach baby.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jo, for sharing with us. We love you. We appreciate you. And it was so great to share in this story.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Roseanne for everything you do for me and for so many women. Yeah, we appreciate it. Well, I definitely do, because it's just sort of, it's that, road it's the light in the dark of someone that's believing in you no matter what and pushing you. I think sometimes that can be scary, especially. So thank you to Roseanne for everything you've done. That light in a, sometimes really dark time, to just keep pushing us and giving us faith in ourselves and trusting our, faith that we will become mums. It's very special, and I'm grateful for everything you did for both of us along the way. So thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome, doll. Well, thank you for sharing with us, and I can't wait to see the pictures.
I know, not long now. I just want to know what it is. Is it a boy or is it a girl?
Oh, it's going to be a surprise. A surprise. Well, thank you so much, Jo.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.